You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal. And this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome.
I can't tell. I think it's going. I pushed record, but there's usually two options that come up to either start the recording or run a test recording. But I think it's actually recording at the moment.
Well, I've just put my faith and trust in you.
I just realized my water's over there.
Water's overrated.
Deadgum.
Says the guy who drinks like 3 gallons a day.
I probably do drink a gallon. I don't know that I drink more than that.
I used to have a great big giant 64-ounce jug, and I would do 3 to 4 of those a day. But it broke. So I quit drinking water.
Well,
only beer for me now.
That'll happen. Sometimes, I guess.
It's got water in it.
Sure. It's a liquid.
I kid. Don't take it too seriously, people. I mean, I like a beer. Don't get me wrong. But as someone who is excessively overweight, drinking a lot of beer is not really conducive to that. So,
beers in heaven?
If I'm going to be there.
We were watching, me and Candace the night we were watching The Office, and it was the Goodbye Toby episode, and Michael did that song to Toby, and he said he had written several songs, and one of them was called Beers in Heaven, I think.
Parody off of the old Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven.
Yeah. So.
Sad song. Real sad song, actually. If I remember correctly, he had a son who tragically passed away, and he wrote that about his son who died. So, pretty sad.
So the writers of The Office are just real jerks,
basically. BJ Novak, Toby Flenderson.
Yeah,
I know Novak. Toby, I'm sure it's probably not. Is Toby's real name Toby? I can't tell because some of the characters have their actual names as their name and some don't.
Yeah, I don't think it is, but I can't remember what it actually is.
And Mindy is also a writer, right?
Yes.
So, or was.
Right. Yeah.
And Mose. Was he a writer or director?
I think maybe he was the director, perhaps. I don't know. He had some kind of role like that, yeah.
He was hilarious every single time he was on there.
Yeah.
There's not a single time that he shows up that's like, well, he shouldn't have been in the scene. It was always, it always added something.
Yeah. Phyllis started off doing something else too, right? She wasn't originally supposed to be on the show, I don't think.
I don't know.
I think that's right. But
my favorite's Creed.
Yes. Creed is my favorite character by far.
Bo Body.
In that same episode is the one where, because it's like where Holly first comes in.
Yeah.
And she's like talking to people. And he's like hiding on the other side of the fridge. You remember that scene? And he's like, this lady's asking questions that are nobody's business. And he's like trying to think of what his job title is. He's like, Quabity Ashwitz. No, but I'm close.
Is that the same episode wherever they have like the little fair out in the parking lot? Yeah. I love that one because she thinks that Kevin has special needs.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to drive to the store. And she's like, you drive your own car? I'm so proud of you.
He's like, thanks. It's like, I'm totally going to bang Holly.
He's super nice and really helpful. That's one of my favorite episodes of the whole show.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We haven't watched it in a while. We just finished watching the final episode of Handmaid's Tale. The final one last season. So,
I've never seen that. I don't know anything about it, actually.
which if we end up talking about what I think we will end up talking about today, that's gonna be an appropriate show. Fits right into the conversation.
Interesting. Because I don't know anything about it, so I'll take your word for it, I guess.
So that, yeah, I mean, I'll people are going to roast me on YouTube for even trying to give a synopsis of The Handmaid's Tale, but essentially it's like I guess you would consider it dystopian, but the United States has been taken over by extremely conservative who kind of rule as a sort of theocratic.
Already, yes.
Yeah. But there's more layers to it, because part of the central theme, like where handmaids come in, is that due to pollution and climate, issues, there's a infertility epidemic. People can't have children. So handmaids are basically women without power who are exploited, who are taken essentially as slaves, is what they are, and they are forced to produce children for the families of the people who have power but are unable to produce their own children. So, yeah. But there's a whole lot of like religion stuff to it, about like they try to run their society from that, like very patriarchal, where the men, are sort of like old school, Old Testament style, like a lot of the the phrasing that they use, is like they always say, like, under his eye, talking about God, like everything happens under God's eye, right? Like that's how they greet each other, or yeah. But anyway, there's a lot of that kind of stuff to it. And the whole show's basically like the main character is one of the handmaids who is fighting for her freedom. And then, I don't want to give too much of the show away, but
there's a guy I'm trying to think of, because I was going to make a joke, but I can't think of the guy's name to even make the joke. But it's some dude that's like super, that sounds like a freaking like wet dream to him. Like sounds like that's like he would love that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of them, unfortunately.
I cannot think of this one guy in particular. I cannot think of his name though.
It's one of the things that's so captivating about that show for me, or was, since we just finished the series, but that was so captivating, is like it's on the verge of ridiculous, because you're like, well, this could never happen. Like, this is so far in that direction that this could never happen. And yet you see some of the like small little like a couple things here, a couple things, we're already heading in that direction. You know what I mean? Like it seems outrageous, but I don't think it's as outrageous as a lot of people think it is.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen it. All I know about it is what you've just told me.
Yeah.
But just from what you've told me, yeah, it doesn't sound like it's that far out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I know one of the things about the show that I forgot to mention, like when I was talking about the patriarchal society of it, is like women aren't allowed to read.
Right.
Because, like people are easier to control if they're ignorant.
Right.
So,
yeah. What's maybe just as dangerous is giving them stuff to read that's BS.
Yes.
So rather than just a lack of education, a false sense of education, of being educated on the topics or whatever, stuff like that is probably maybe worse than not letting people be educated at all.
Right.
I don't know. That's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting, especially when you consider the people that are overall intelligent people, so they can articulate things and they can grasp a hold of things and put concepts together, but they're only receiving that one side of things, to where like they intelligent enough that when you indoctrinate them with whatever it is that you're trying to indoctrinate them with, they can grasp onto it and really run with that, but then they're not understanding the indoctrination side of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is, there can be a powder keg there, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, if you're only getting your news from one source, and like if you listen to maybe you're into podcasts and you listen to you only listen to these particular podcasts, if you're any information that you receive is coming from like a specific set of sources, then yeah, like I don't know, man. Like you can have this false sense of like, oh, I know what I'm talking about, but you really have no clue.
Yeah.
Because you're only hearing this one viewpoint, you know? And I mean, we're all in danger of that. But yeah, it's something to be.
Yeah, I did.
You know.
I seen a TikTok video that this little conversation that we're having reminded me of, and it was probably, the TikTok video probably came off a little harsher. As someone who born, raised, and has lived their entire life in a small town, the video was probably a little harsh for me, but the sentiment I get. And the sentiment was essentially that he was talking about how, like, the most, from this person's opinion, which isn't mine, by the way, from this person's opinion, he said that the people who seem to be like the ones causing the most damage are the people are those people who were born, raised, and never left their small rural town. Because you're surrounded by people who you've known your whole life. They think like you. They do everything together, right? We talked about this, like going all the way back to our first episodes, right? Like our deconstruction episode talked about how we live in a very small county. For the people watching or listening that don't know us personally, we live in a county that has one stoplight in rural Western Kentucky. It's a very, very, very tiny town. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we talked about in our deconstruction episode how there is no other religion available in this county. Like, there is about every flavor of Christianity you could want. There's Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, non-denom. There's Jehovah's Witness. I don't know that there's an LDS. I don't know that we have any Mormons here, Latter-day Saints, but
I don't think so.
There's pretty well about any sort of Christianity that you want, you can get here.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's any place of worship that's non-Christian. Like, I don't think we have any. I'm positive that we don't have any Muslim mosques. We don't have any Hindu temples. There's no Jewish synagogues here. There's probably within driving distance, Owensboro, Bowling Green. I know there's a mosque in Bowling Green, and I'm sure there's a Jewish synagogue there. Like, I don't know, but I know in the county that we live in, there is nothing else, right? So the whole point being, like, when you are from a small town like that and you never leave, that's all you know, you're only surrounded with people who think like you. It's like an information silo. You know what I mean? But what you notice with people, like, and I mean, this will get a little more political for most people, but it kind of aligns with me, at least. What you see is that you'll get a complaint when people leave a small town and then they go off to like college. And then you get this idea that colleges are indoctrinating our young people with liberal ideology. And it's just that they got out of the small town and were actually exposed to people that aren't like them. They were exposed to minorities. They were exposed to people of other religions. And like, it expanded their worldview, It's not anything, it has nothing to do with indoctrination. It's actually the opposite of that. Like, they were, most of the time, I would argue, it unintentionally indoctrinated in their hometown.
Right.
It's not like I don't think most people don't have like, are intentionally trying to indoctrinate people, or they have like bad motives, but it's just it's the simple world that we live in. And then in the way that we grew up here, like, I went to public school in this county, and I don't know that I ever went to school with more than one person in our grade at a time that wasn't Caucasian, white.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's 99.9% of the people that we went to school with were white people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So of course it's a culture shock when you go to a university, and now it's like, especially somebody like me who played on the football team, like, there's a large number of minorities on the athletics team. Like, I went from a place that was 99.9% white to, a place where it's 50-50.
Yeah.
That's a huge culture shock. It was a good for me. I needed that. I needed to experience that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That the only thing that I was thinking as you were saying all that is exactly what you ended with there. Is just like you just don't know that until you know it.
Yeah. Until you're exposed to it.
Yeah.
How else can you? That's what it's almost hard in a lot of ways when you hear people say certain things, because it's hard not to feel. I don't even know how I want to say that. It's hard not to feel a certain way just because people speak with such confidence about things. And you, as someone who's lived it and experienced and gone out and had new experiences, and someone who's grown within myself, like, I'm not the same person I was because I've had these experiences. There was a time in my life when I would have agreed and wholeheartedly thought the exact same way you do, but I've lived different experiences that shown me that that's not true. But then you hear them speak so confidently,
Right.
and it's like, you're just ignorant. You just don't know. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean stupid. I mean uninformed, ignorant. Like,
right. And it's man. So I don't know. I have so many things going through my head after today, and with this whole conversation, because this common theme keeps coming up in my mind as like a root of all of this, which is, surprise, surprise, it's a biblical thing, right? Like pride. Like because I was thinking as you were saying that, like someone that would be offended by you saying ignorant, like even though you mean uninformed, even then people could take offense to that, saying that they are uninformed.
right.
And but what is that? That's pride, right? That's ego. That's it, in one sense it is insecurity,
Right.
that's rooted in pride, I think. And pride comes before the fall, right? And the whole idea of like Lucifer, like well, I mean, it's that's the story that was handed on to us anyway,
Right.
Of Lucifer and like pride,
Right.
resulting in his fall.
Well, trust me, I've seen more comments on Facebook within the last 4 days about how pride was the original sin than I've seen in the last 300 and some odd days put together. So,
Right. Well, see, I actually wasn't even thinking that when I said that. I was just thinking, it didn't occur to me until as I was saying it that I was like, oh yeah, it's Pride Month.
yeah.
But I was just thinking about it like in that.
Right. No, I know exactly what you're saying because it's true. But the funny thing about it is, I think if someone who would have been offended by what I said about being ignorant or uninformed, if they would stay calm enough for you to actually explain what you meant, they would all acknowledge, like, I'm freaking ignorant about brain surgery. I'm uninformed about it. I don't know anything about it.
Right.
I am ignorant about so many things. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I had to have Andrew come over and install my hot water heater because I don't know how to do that. I'm ignorant
Right.
on that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, you can't know everything. There's inevitably, even the smartest people who walk the earth are ignorant about some things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But that goes back to what I was saying before, though, because like I think that a lot of those big things, like the things that we talk about and that we're gonna talk about today, are things that I think people have a false sense of their own understanding of the in that of both religion and politics, and like,
what is that, Dunning-Kruger?
something that's a thing.
I think that might be where it's, I can't remember, but it's where you have a false sense of, like, you feel like you know what you're talking about when in
Right.
reality you really don't, like a false sense of expertise, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. And as someone that watches a lot of news and hears this one perspective, listens to podcasts and only hears this one perspective, they can rattle off all this stuff that they think are facts. But like if you're never hearing the opposite side of that and saying that like, oh, maybe this is more complicated
Right.
than I think it is. Well, if you're never exposed to that, then yeah, you have this false sense of like, I know what I'm talking about.
Well, and look, and it's almost so silly to even think about, because think about like what you're saying there. Like, oh yeah, maybe it's more complicated. Well, human beings are complicated. Life is complicated. The world, nothing is simple. Like,
Yeah.
why would we think it isn't complicated? You know what I mean? Like, of course,
Yeah.
almost always, if we're talking about life, it's probably more complicated than you're giving it credit for on almost every aspect.
Yeah.
Even the things that you think are the most basic, simple. Not. That's
Yeah.
not the way life is.
Yeah, and again, that goes for like the stuff that we talk about a lot, like religion. Like a lot of people just take for granted, like the hell issue. Like a lot of people just take for granted that hell is eternal conscious torment. They think the Bible clearly teaches it, and that it's always been believed in the church. And like, that's just not the case.
Right.
Like all of that. I mean, hell as eternal conscious torment specifically is what I mean.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I know that for sure as someone who has studied, not in depth, but has strayed outside of Christianity from time to time. And, you know, like I said last week, that I have a Bhagavad Gita sitting beside my Bible on the nightstand beside my bed. You know, like I have read some of these texts, and oh, trust me, like I know there's that false sense of only listening to that one tradition, right? If you're only, like, people only listening to Christian sources, but then talking down about all these other religions, and which you've never read them, you've never studied, you know what I mean? It's the information silo, and that's not even trying to say like that Christianity isn't the right religion or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
like the point being that you often hear people who've never read those texts, who's never studied those other religions, talk down about them or talk about why they're silly or why they're not true, and they've never even studied them. You know, it's that false sense of like, no, listen to a Christian apologist try to proof text you about why these other religions are false. Isn't studying these other religions. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I don't know. I've been on a real roller coaster today.
you've been on a bender today.
Yeah.
I haven't. It's been a pretty chill day for me.
I mean, it's not like I'm not like in despair about it. I have too much. I guess I have too much hope.
Get too much joy in your heart.
Yeah. To be in despair over it all, but man, it does make your heart hurt a little bit hearing some of these stories. Like, so
I think it should.
yeah,
It should.
yeah. But just to let the folks know what I'm talking about, I started listening to a book by Tim Alberta. It's called The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory: American Evangelicals in an Age of Extremism. And it's rocking my world. It's pretty crazy. Like he's a journalist, and a lot of it is hard to keep up with because it's just nonstop stories of people and all the names that he's throwing out there and like conversations, and he's basically like retelling conversations that he had and different things, and like all the different names in this, well, I don't know what you would call that sphere.
There you go.
But it's hard to keep track of everyone. But like in particular today, some of the stuff that was bothering me more maybe than other portions of, I mean, there's been stuff throughout the whole book that's been troubling, but the number one thing today, he was talking about an event that he went to in Branson, Missouri, called Reawaken America, I think is what it was called.
Sounds pretty stereotypical of what I would expect. I mean, I've never heard of it, but
I think that's what the name of it was. And he was recounting some of the speakers and some of the things that they said and scriptures that they used and how they used them. And man, it really, it really got to me. I don't know how to explain how it made me feel, but like, other than just like, oh, man, you know?
I mean, I can't explain how you felt because I don't know how you felt, but I would assume I'm putting myself in your shoes. What I would assume that the reason why you're finding hard the words to describe the way you felt is because it was probably a mixture of a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it was like some of the stuff that has been said in these spaces of, Trumpism or whatever, like the super right-wing conservative Christian nationalists, those spaces, like some of the stuff that's been said is just blasphemous to the point of like, there was one point today when I was listening that I actually kind of felt myself getting a little bit physically sick.
Yeah.
Hearing it. Some of the stuff that was said. Because it is such a distortion
Right.
of the gospel, the actual gospel, the real one,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not glad to hear that you're having, feeling these negative things, but in a way I am, just because this is something that, and I don't say this to like because I'm down the road from you or whatever. It's just simply because you've admitted that yourself that you're not a very political person, and I'm the
Right.
opposite of that. I've been deeply following politics since I was in high school. Like, it's so for that reason, I've been aware of this, like intimately aware of this for a very long time, and I felt like I was screaming into the void, like no one else can see this. Why am I the only person? And of course, with the podcasts and YouTube and different things, I come to find out that I'm not the only one, that there are, like Tim Whitaker's got a huge voice out there with the new evangelicals that's kind of
Right.
echoing, he's been sounding this alarm for the last few years. And you come to find out there are others out there like this, but within our small community, I was like, I'm the heretic here. I'm the outlier. Nobody else can see this but me. Why can nobody see this? Like even as a teenager being able to see it to a certain extent and being like, I'm a child still. Why? So just knowing that like you're kind of seeing some of those same things is a little bit of solace for me.
Well, I mean, I've been seeing, like back whenever we did our episode on Christian nationalism, I had seen enough at that point to
Right.
know that like this was something, but I just got a deeper insight into it. There's just so much information that this book is. I'm listening to the audiobook and it's like 18 hours long.
Yeah.
And I'm a little over halfway through it at this point, and I keep like being like, I can't take any more of this, and I keep wanting to shut it off, but then I don't, and it's almost like I can't turn it off.
It's like a car crash that you're disgusted to look at, but you can't turn away. No.
I mean, in a sense, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I think part of me also feels like there's probably a deeper part of me that's like, I need to hear this,
Right.
even if it's not what I want to hear.
Right.
I need to hear it,
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like, I don't know. I don't even remember all the stuff that was said. To give examples or whatever. And I don't know that it's worth repeating anyway. But suffice to say, like there's been just some of the ways that scriptures were used to weaponize against people, specifically to not love your enemy as yourself.
Right.
Some of the rhetoric, some of the name calling, and like I don't know. Some of the stories I heard were just really disturbing to me, honestly. You know?
Yeah, as I think they should be. You know,
Yeah.
I think that that's a good thing that it does evoke that emotion with you. You know, I mean, the Bible, the Gospels do say when Jesus looked upon the crowds and he saw the state that they were in, he was moved with compassion.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like you should feel that way. It's if you're not moved with compassion, I think that's probably a bad sign, you know? And I don't think that it always necessarily feels like it's manifesting even as compassion. It can feel like it's manifesting as anger, because you can feel anger and, you know, just all these different emotions wrapped into one. But I do
Yeah.
think the root of that, for me, I can't speak for you, but I know you well enough to know that this is the case, really is compassion, right? Because
Yeah.
you have compassion on the people that it's hurting, but also, man, there are people that we love that are saying some of this stuff too, and we deeply love these people, and we have compassion on them because you can see, like, man, if you could just see what I see, you could be free from this, you know, like, but that comes from a place of compassion too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It just really is. It's super frustrating on a lot of levels. Again, I'm not a super political person, but as a Christian, as someone who holds all of this dearly, like my faith and my beliefs and all of that, the Christian tradition, again, I, I care about that.
Yeah.
You know, I care deeply about all of that. And to see it, oh, the word I was going to use is bastardized, but like just the blasphemy, the outright denial of just a constant theme throughout the entirety of the scriptures. Christian nationalism is not biblical. It just is not. All the way through. Jesus did not assume power as a political power.
Right.
He specifically let the powers murder him.
Right.
And
It even says that if he wanted to take power and wanted to take himself off the cross, he would come down. You know, it's like that quote I seen, you know, that I told you about on Monday, that I saw, you know, that the local church in Sacramento has a sign up that says something to the effect, it wasn't human nails that held Jesus to the cross. He was held up there by his own love.
Yeah.
If he wanted to come down, you know, he could have.
Right.
He could, if he wanted to take power, he could have.
He literally ran away when they tried to make him king one time.
Yeah.
Like, but he is king. That's the thing that's so messed up about all of this, is that he is king and he is Lord and he is the perfect example of what godly leadership is, of what it means to be a king,
Right.
and someone who's in a position of power and authority. And what does he do? He washes people's freaking feet, man.
Right. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve.
He let them kill him. He didn't. And it's not even. I mean, there's so many things to be said about Jesus, obviously, but even not just that. If you go back and you look at the stories, like before they appointed a king, God said outright, "I want to be your king. I don't want you guys to have a human king,
Right.
but because you won't shut up about it, here you go." Essentially, that's the Sean Case version.
Sean Case translation.
But yeah, that was never what God intended.
Right.
Was for the Israelites to have a king. And then whenever they did have a king, they couldn't find one that wouldn't stop screwing the whole thing up.
Right.
Over and over and over again. The whole of the Old Testament is essentially a critique of of this.
Well, and that's, I think, what you're saying there. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that, I personally, I think, gets at the root of the problem, which is not having a good understanding, a clear understanding of which not that I even do either, but I think I have a better understanding than some of what the scriptures even are, how they should be used. Like if you try to literalize all that stuff, and you're trying to weave together some cohesive linear story to where it's all literally what it says, right? It goes back to that argument that me and you had several, months ago about like, well, the Bible says, and you were like, no, it doesn't. Like, because again, if that's how you're reading it, that is what it says.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the root of a whole lot of that like Christian nationalism stuff comes from, right? You'll hear a lot of quotes of some of that, the chosen people and the conquest stuff, you know what I mean? And like it's trying to make sense of trying to marry, in a sense, things that I would argue, and I think you would too, that are being critiqued in the Old Testament.
Right, yeah.
With the servant king, Jesus, and trying to put those two things together in some sort of cohesive way to where I would argue that you get some sort of Frankenstein patchworked together that looks nothing like the Father or the Son.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It really does make me feel like it's the whole, like, am I taking crazy pills thing, It's,
oh yeah, I know.
because I just don't see any warrant for it in the scriptures at all.
Well, and I think that's why you get to that whole, like what I was just explaining is how you get to the whole, like, well, he came back once as a lamb, but next time he's a lion. As if Jesus, the person that you read in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is coming back to murder people.
The one who is the same yesterday, today, and forever is somehow coming back as a bloodthirsty monster.
But that's where that comes from, is it's trying to rationalize how God can look like the God as portrayed in some of the stories of the Old Testament and look like Jesus simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess yeah. I mean, I can see how people can do that, but I don't see how you can do that without just completely ignoring Jesus' entire life and message. I mean,
I would agree. Well, that's part of my critique on what I would refer to as churchianity as a whole, is you actually hear very little of Jesus. I would argue you hear a whole lot of here a verse, there a verse.
Yeah.
Whole lot of Paul. No offense to Paul, because I like the guy too.
Yeah.
You hear a whole lot of that. Hear a whole lot of some Psalms, some of the Old Testament stories. That's where you spend a lot of time in your Sunday school lessons, is the Old Testament stories. But I think if we're being honest, you get very little of Jesus.
Yeah. It's just so... I mean, I know I keep just making obvious statements left and right, but it's just so frustrating. Like, when John, again, in Revelation, whenever John hears, look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has conquered, has overcome. When he actually looks to see what he heard, what he sees is a slain lamb. And it's that is how you conquer. That is how he conquered. That is how he is yes, he's the King of Kings, but his crown is a crown of thorns. And his throne is a cross. Like,
which is funny enough, because so James and John ask that when he ascends to his power, for his to be seated at his right and left, when you come into your kingdom, when you come into the power of your kingdom.
Yeah.
And what does he tell them? You don't know what you're asking for.
Right.
Because the next day,
I
think it was the next day, or a couple days later.
Right.
Who's on his right and left? It's two people hanging on a cross.
Yeah.
Because that's what it means.
Yeah.
That's the picture of power in the upside down kingdom of Christ.
Exactly.
It doesn't look like army tanks and F-15 bombers and whatever else kind of. That's another thing I'm ignorant on, by the way, is weaponry. So I don't even know, but it doesn't look like that.
The greatest power in the world is self-giving love. Period. That is how the Lamb conquers, and that is how the entire cosmos is healed. Forget about making America great again. The entire cosmos is healed. By what? By self-giving love.
Kenotic, self-outpouring, agape love.
And that's what we need. If you want to actually make America great again, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
You follow the example of the one that you say you follow. That's how you do it. But that's not practical. Oh, we tried the whole turn the other cheek thing and it didn't work.
Right.
Well, no. I almost cussed. No crap, it didn't. It doesn't work. By what standard
Right.
does it work or not work?
Yeah, I mean, by depending on who you're asking, Jesus didn't work either. His whole kingdom failed. He died, right?
Got him killed.
He failed.
Right.
According to some.
Yeah.
Depending on whose perspective you're looking at.
Yeah.
So turn the other cheek failed for him too, if you think power looks like domination and control over others.
Yeah. If you think if by work you mean I save my own life at the expense of others.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't work. He literally gave up his life for the entire world. Oh well. I'm fired up.
You should have just been following the law. I mean, that's what I hear on videos I see on Facebook whenever I see someone brutally murdered in the street. Should have just been following the law. So. But Jesus was moved with compassion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part of that just completely is almost unfathomable to me, is how we can, and I don't want to ignore people's legitimate concerns about things, right? Because where my mind went when I was saying that was immigration and some of the things that I'm hearing said about immigrants.
Yeah.
And I keep that phrase of Jesus being moved with compassion when he saw the crowds keeps running through my mind. And I can't help but think about these people who are so desperate. The situation that they're coming out of is so horrific and so desperate. And their love for their family and their children is so deep that they are willing to risk it all to leave their other family behind, to leave their houses behind, to leave what little bit that they do have, to leave it all behind for the prayer that their children will grow up in a little bit of a better situation.
Right.
And instead we gather around and chant, send them back, and think that Jesus
is on your side.
Is on that side. The one who looks at the crowd and is moved with compassion. That it infuriates me. And listen, the people who's been following us for a while know, like, you cry, but I don't cry that often, and I feel on the verge of tears. Like, that moves me, because that's, I mean, it's unexplainable. I can't understand it. I cannot wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, it really is like we serve a different God. It's like we're serving a different Jesus. And I don't know what to make of that. Like, it really is. I don't know how to make sense of that other than without some sort of idea of spiritual warfare. Which, funny enough, is a common thing in the whole Christian nationalist. But, like, it seems like they blur the line between what's spiritual and physical, because they claim it's a spiritual warfare thing. But their enemies are earthly. It's people that they're coming at. It's people that they're hurting. It's people that they're calling names and trying to hurt. Like in the case of, like, like January 6th, like looking for Pence. Like they want, like, it's actual people that you consider your enemies.
Yeah.
It's literally flesh that you're considering your enemy, not the principalities and the powers. But we're framing it as if it is.
Right.
Out of our mouths, we're saying, not even that. Actually, that's where it's hard to even talk about it because the lines have been so blurred in that way. Some of the things that are said about spiritual warfare versus like these are our enemies. The enemy is from within, right? It's even if you consider, even if they are actually your enemies. Again, what did Jesus say?
Right.
Love them.
Love your enemies.
And then the Apostle Paul says it also. And in Romans 12, I think, whenever he says you overcome evil with good, you don't overcome evil with evil, but you overcome it with good. He says that literally in the context of loving your enemies.
Yeah.
That is how you overcome evil, with love, with doing good to people, treating people the way you want to be treated. Like, and that sounds too simple for some people. Some people are like, oh, it has to be more than just being nice. Well, I mean, I guess if love isn't just being nice, I guess, but it's not that.
Right. Well, and that's why when I was saying about immigration, I tried to frame it in a way that was because, like, I recognize that there are legitimate concerns that people have, and that's fine. Like, I understand that. I'm not saying that you should just have open borders and allow people to just come in.
Right, yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about, but that's also not what we're seeing. We're seeing immigration officers coming into elementary schools, and we're not just trying to enforce laws, but we're like on a witch hunt to find them and celebrating others' pain and celebrating the fact that we are doing this to these people. You know what I mean? Like, that's different. That's not what I'm talking. I'm not talking about enforcing laws and giving people due process and going about things in the most humane and loving way possible. You know what I mean? Like, there are that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the celebration and other people's suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Being glad, being happy to see people fall. Like, I don't know. I heard so many things today. Like that, I heard different folks on record as saying things like there was someone who gave some sort of prophecy that the angel of death would visit Joe Biden and someone else. I think I don't remember exactly who it was, but whoever their enemy happens to be, like people wishing death, literally like wishing death and wishing that these people would be murdered, like, and saying it in the name of Christ.
Yeah.
How anti-Christ can you get?
And not that it would make any difference if it was literally any other human, but like a lot of these people are fellow believers, like fellow Christians. Joe Biden is a lifelong Catholic.
Right.
You heard the same thing when Obama was the president. The man is a professing Christian. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even, you're claiming spiritual warfare against someone in your own neighborhood.
Right. Because you have different ideologies, different. In some cases, it's not even that. Like, there's so many people in this. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to misspeak here, but if I'm not mistaken, Tim Alberta is actually like a very conservative, like, Christian.
Yeah.
But he's reporting on all this stuff that makes it sound like he's not, from certain people's perspective.
Right.
And like Russell Moore, you know who Russell Moore is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's super conservative. But he's come out against Trump. It's like anyone that everyone gets deemed evil, enemy, you're a liberal, you're woke, whatever.
Right.
Because you oppose Trump. And some people are actually like pretty like conservative.
Yeah.
And Christians, but they're they made the list, the crap list.
But that's an unfortunate thing. Like that's what that is just another factor into how complicated this thing is, right? Because it really, I think that my not unprofessional. What is the unexpert? Whatever the word for that is, my non-expert opinion is that it's part of the system. It's built that right there. What you're talking about is built into the very system that we have, because the system that we have is set up to where only one of these two parties is going to win politically. And so you're either with us or you're against us. If you oppose what we stand for, that means you're on the other team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that just the very nature of the system that we have set up is designed to create that duality to where you're either with us or against us.
Yeah. And that,
I mean, that's what, for me personally, that's one of the unfortunate things to it. Is like anytime that I've tried to engage in political, conversations with people around here, that's always the retort. It's always like, because I am left leaning, admittedly. But
right.
still, that doesn't mean that I I wholeheartedly support everything the Democrats do. I'm also not a registered Democrat, even though I'm left leaning. You know what I mean? But people can't comprehend that. It's like, instead of even like, if you try to engage in conversations with people about this, it's like, well, this person. Well, I'm not talking about this person. I'm not talking about Joe Biden. He's not the president. He was, and he's not now. I'm not talking about him. I don't care about him.
Yeah.
In a political way, I do care about him as a person, but not in a in the context of having a debate about what he believes politically. He's not the president. He's retired.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I had a thought a minute ago and I lost it as soon as I had it.
It'd be like that.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. It's just been a bit of a frustrating day.
It's kind of a funny thing that this came up for you today, because this has not been, like I mean, I guess Trump's always in the news, but no more here lately than he always is. You know what I mean? It's not one of those things, like nothing out of the ordinary has really gone on. Which unfortunately every day is out of the ordinary. That, the out of the ordinary is our new normal. So it's going to take something super extraordinary for it to be, but
yeah.
And it's not something that we've talked about recently. So
yeah. It's just something that I've been wanting to educate myself more on. And, I had to listen to, I like listening to audiobooks on Spotify, and I came across that one. That was one that was like recommended or whatever, and I'd heard about it. And I'd actually listened to Tim Alberta on some other podcasts and stuff talking about it. And I was like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And then that was actually last month, and I ran out of listening hours for the month. So then I had to start it again. I was trying to find something to listen to while I was at work, and I came across it, and I was like, oh yeah, I started that and didn't finish it. So I was listening to it, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't like anything in particular, I guess, that triggered it, other than like I was just trying to find something to listen to.
yeah.
But yeah, I've been listening to that, and I've started listening to re-listening to a series that the Holy Post did with Kristen Dumais, Cobez, something like that. Isn't that her name?
Kristen Dumais. I don't remember what the last part of it is, but
anyway, yeah, she authored that, Jesus and John Wayne.
Yeah.
And they did a whole series of podcast episodes with her. I can't remember how many is in it, 4 or 5 episodes, where she kind of goes through, kind of outlines like the book and stuff, the history of all that. So like between that and this book, it's just been a lot. It's been a lot to take in. A lot of the history, and there's so much information. There's so much stuff that I don't know because I'm so like turned off, I guess, by the misinformation, disinformation, and like just the fact that it's almost like it's almost become a thing where you just don't have it. I don't know that you can trust anything.
right.
like what sources are reliable and which ones aren't? And I mean, do you have to go so far as to like actually try to find the exact same like story on like 10 different news outlets to try to find some sort of I'm just not going to put that much effort into it.
Right. Who has the time to?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
And I guess if that was your job, you would. But I mean, I'm just a regular dude. I got a job. I got other stuff I got going on. I'm not going to put that kind of time and effort into it. So I just don't even worry myself with a lot of this stuff. And then
right.
so a lot of the stuff that's in the book may actually be stuff that like everyone that like people already know about, but it was all new to me.
Yeah. In recent months, I've had to really, I don't know, the word that came to mind was withdraw myself from that world.
Yeah.
Or, just kind of not pay attention, I guess. Maybe that's not the right way, not the right approach, because we need to be paying attention to that stuff always. But like for my own mental health, you just have to kind of step away and take a break from that, because you can get, as you were indicating, the emotions that you were feeling today, you can get swallowed up in some of that, and it can lead you down a pretty bad way, So I've had to basically from, November, after that initial flurry, had to kind of since January, the last 6 months, had to just, I can't immerse myself in this world right now. I just can't do it.
Yeah. Something that was also interesting as I was listening to, in particular, he did a whole section where he was talking about Greg Locke, and I think he went to one of his like tent revival things or something that he had, and he said there was people there dressed like had like military gear and literally carrying guns on them, like had AR-15s, and it's like what are we doing? Isn't this church? Isn't this church though?
It's just so funny though how some of that stuff is baked in that you don't even realize. Like, how long were you told that, like, in the end of days they're gonna come for you with guns and they're gonna, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's been incorporated within, enmeshed within American Christianity for so long. All of us who are of middle age now grew up with that, just brainwashed into us that there's a war coming and we got to be ready. They're going to come with guns and you're going to do this. And are you ready? I'm in the Lord's army. Like, even children's songs have that, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's that military idea is just baked into Christianity from the time that we were in nursery at church on up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I do think it's actually worse, like, given where we live. Like, gun culture is just
right.
I would say it's more prevalent here than it is in other parts of the country. It was, but one thing that from listening to that section with Greg Locke that I just thought was interesting was that, man, I would have fit in great there before I got converted. Before it really was interesting to think about, like, it, because one of the biggest things that got me to start reconsidering whether I believed in God, whether could be a Christian or not, was the teachings of Jesus. Like, being confronted with, because just like everything else, I had what I would consider like a false sense of knowing. Like, the thing that kept me for so long in that space of deconstruction of, like, maybe I'm an atheist, maybe I'm agnostic, I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing that kept me in that space for so long was that was certain that I knew what it meant to be a Christian and what the scriptures said and what it meant to be a Christian. And I was also certain that I didn't believe that. So it was just that's what it was for all of those years. And it wasn't until I had that, and it was actually, it was a conversation that me and you had. Like, you just pointed out the fact that Jesus was like, yeah, turn the other cheek. And it's stupid because that's something that literally I had heard my entire life. Like, it is something that I can't even explain how that switch just flips. And it's like, oh, what if he actually meant that? What if he, meant the things that he taught? Huh. What would that mean? And like, but that was really like, that was like the initial thing that kind of like got me kind of out of that whole mindset. But if I had not ever done that, if I had like reconstructed into like what it just kind of went back to what I was believing before, who knows, man? Like, maybe I would have been at these rallies with people. Like, I don't know. That was literally like, I changed so much after this reconstruction.
Yeah.
In all those ways. Like, I would have probably been there with my AR-15 and my, FJB hat on, and I probably would have fit in great with all of that crowd.
We probably wouldn't be sitting here doing this.
Yeah, certainly not. And I hate to even say it like that, because I know how that comes across. It makes it sound like I'm
Yeah.
super pious, or like
Right.
like I've got. But no, I'm just talking about taking Jesus's words seriously. Like the things that he says.
There's just so many different ways that you can go about this conversation, because we've already said it 3 or 4 times, but things are so complicated, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at what you're saying from a theological perspective of like, I can only speak for myself and my own personal experiences, but the Christianity that I understood, I don't ever want to say that this was the Christianity that was taught to me, but this was the way I understood it.
Right.
Was that it's all about what happens when you die. The whole gospel is that you're a sinner who deserves to be punished for eternity in hell. But God provided a sacrifice who was murdered in your place, so that now you don't have to go to hell, you can get to heaven. That was my conception of the gospel.
Right.
But if that's what you reduce it to, it doesn't matter what Jesus taught about all that stuff. That's like icing on that. That's good. If you can like try your best to live a good life, but that's not what it's about. We reduced Jesus down to dying on the cross.
Right.
That's the only thing that matters. All that other stuff is like the first 30 years of his life, or 30, all of it, but the last week basically, or just whatever,
Yeah.
But like when you reduce Jesus down to that, if that is your conception of the gospel, then like, yeah, you don't ever have to come face to face with those teachings and to take them seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can dismiss them as impractical.
Well, and like it's the most common thing I've heard about the Sermon on the Mount. Like, well, he's just the whole Sermon on the Mount was just him showing that you can't keep it. I mean, I don't know that I would reduce the Sermon on the Mount to him just proving a point that you can't keep it, so that you have to rely on him to die in your place. Like, I don't want to say that that's not part, even though I don't believe that's at all any part of what he's doing there. But personally, I don't believe that. But I don't want to reduce it down to that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I don't believe that's all he's doing there, even if you think that's what he's doing at all. Like, it's not just if you actually want to try to make yourself righteous, then you live by this. And it's like, well, hell, I guess I can't. So,
right.
Because if you take that approach to it, then it is like, well, turn the other cheek. Yeah, that's what Jesus said. But he was making a point that you can't do that.
Yeah.
No, you can. You can choose to turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
People have done it.
Yeah. That's what martyrs are.
Bonhoeffer?
Right. I mean, that's how the church was built in those early days. The church was built on the blood of the martyrs. Like, and they had no fear of death.
Right.
Because, I don't know. It's just, I don't even know. I mean, just so many things that Jesus said, so many things that he said just have to be ignored. And I don't even mean explained away, because some of it is just very plain. Like, a new commandment I give to you, that you love each other the way that I have loved you. Well, I mean, okay. uh, and
No,
like,
but he was talking to his disciples there, so you only have to love other believers.
oh, okay. No, but like literally in the Sermon on the Mount, you get to the end of it. It's like, because it's 3 chapters long, you get to the end of Matthew 7, and he says, the one who hears these words of mine and does them, puts them into action, will be like the one who built his house upon the rock. I don't know how much more clear we need that to be before we like stop trying to explain away everything he says there. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard. No crap. That's why it's a narrow way.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to do, but man, we're called to do it. And I don't know, just the complete disregard for the words of Jesus. And in a lot of cases, saying the exact opposite of anything that Jesus would have said. I don't know.
Now, those are just woke talking points.
Yeah.
The Sermon on the Mount. How dare you preach that in church?
Yeah. The fact that that's a thing that people actually, because those are real stories from real people that I've heard say that. And it's like,
It wasn't that Russell Moore that said that?
yeah, Russell, I heard that from Russell Moore. I've also heard Brad Jersick say that before. And it's like, man, what are we doing when the Sermon on the Mount is dismissed like that? Like, I don't know. I really feel like American evangelicalism, eh, at least a certain subset of it, is probably doomed. That's kind of how I feel today. Like,
I mean, this will probably be a little bit inflammatory, but I hope you're right.
it. I mean, doomed by which I mean, I don't mean the church, by the way.
Right.
I mean a specific subset of American evangelicalism is what I mean,
Yes.
which is what I said, but I just want to make it even more clear and say it again.
Right.
Because the church, the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Jesus said that. So it's not the church that is
Right.
but there are certain movements that need to go.
In my mind goes to the whole topic, the idea of resurrection, right? Like God is a God of life, not a God of death. But in order for there to be rebirth, there has to be a death. That's why, that was one of the things I loved in that episode that you sent me the other day, or yesterday, I think it was, The Plunge with Jordan Daniel Wood.
Yeah.
He was talking at the very beginning of it about the paradox of death and how it's weird. And I loved that whole section of what he was talking about there. But he talked about even within just our sacraments, right, of baptism, it's both representative of death and new life. Like that, there has to be death for there to be rebirth. And what did Jesus tell Nicodemus? That you have to be born again. There is a subset, in my opinion, of American evangelicalism that needs to die. It needs to die. But I don't mean it needs to stay dead. It needs a rebirth.
It needs to be baptized.
Or some would call it a revival.
Right. Reformation.
A reformation. But in order for that to happen, there has to be a death.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I say I hope you're right, that's what I'm talking about. That's not mean that again, heavy emphasis on what you said at the outright, and you reemphasize that we're not talking about the entirety of American Christianity. We're talking about that small subset. But even within that, even when I say I hope it does die, I'm saying that as someone who believes in, that there can be a renewal of life.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that. I am hopeful for that. That I don't know. Honestly, as I was saying that, I was like, "Do you believe that?"
Well, it's a good question to ask yourself. Do you really believe that? You are a universalist.
Well, yeah, in the ultimate sense, yeah. But like,
Well, I just mean like, yes, literally in the ultimate sense, but just like the whole idea behind universalism is that complete and total salvation, healing, sozo, to the uttermost.
right?
Every aspect will
Yeah.
be healed, or depending on your conception of time.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess I do believe that. Yeah. And it just doesn't. And it does give me a little solace, I guess, for now. Like I said, I'm not in despair. I started off this whole thing by saying I'm not in despair. But I am grieved. I think that's the same wording I used in the Christian Nationalism episode that we did. But yeah, I am just grieved. And I'm grieved and for me, it's a purely Christian thing. It's a purely theological thing. It's because I'm not super political. I've never really been like super into politics. At one time, I would have said I was kind of political, but it was only like I would have fallen into that category of people that's like I only hear one perspective sometimes, and
right.
I'm just kind of going with whatever was handed to me. You know, I that's what I would have kind of. That's the truth of the matter, whether I would have admitted that to myself back then or not. But I don't. But I don't even remember what I was saying, like why I was saying all that now. But yeah,
Yeah.
do you remember what I was saying?
You were saying that you were grieved.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm just kind of grieved by the. It's a theological thing for me. I'm not a super political person, so like I'm not even looking at this as like these folks are wrong on like politically. Like I disagree with these political stances
Right.
of everyone on the right. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Right.
Um, I will say, listening to those freaking stories I heard today from all these people m- made me be like, well, maybe I should have freaking voted this last election. But even that was coming out of a not a good place. That was hypocritical of me to even have that sort of like, oh, they're my enemy, and I want to stick it to them by voting.
Right.
You know, like even that is in the wrong spirit. But at least I recognize that, I guess. But like, yeah, like it was. I'm just kind of so all of this is from a theological perspective for me. Really, it's like
Right.
what I'm grieved by is that it really does feel like at least in certain sections of the sphere of people that we're talking about, it really does feel like we've abandoned Jesus. We've made Jesus into some sort of like uh I was gonna say idol, but like we've made Jesus in our image, in some false image, and it's like it's not even recognizable to the Jesus of the Gospels.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm grieved by.
I agree with that. And actually that's I mean, a lot of times that's what I mean too when I talk politically. You know, people, I don't think people understand that because I mean, again, I do align politically with the left more often than the right. I'm pretty left in most of my political thinking. But but that doesn't mean, number one, that doesn't mean that I align with everything on the left. And number two, like my critiques come from a place of theology. Like I acknowledge that I am not a tax law expert. I acknowledge that I am not an immigration expert. I acknowledge that I am not a foreign policy expert. You know what I mean? So there are people out there who know more about those topics than me that can disagree with me politically, and I'm sure that they have wonderful, valid, perfectly good reasons for thinking that. because I don't know everything and I don't have it all figured out. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what triggers me and where I get angry and where I start to levy my critiques is when Christianity is weaponized in a way that is what you're saying, antichrist, in my opinion. Like, that's where my critiques lie. Like, when I speak out about the way, like abortion, for example, that topic is really, a big trigger topic. I don't say what I do because I think that the left has it figured out.
Right.
You know what I mean? I say what I do because of my conception of Christianity and Jesus and what he stood for. And you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I see something that is a good and noble cause, in my opinion, being perverted and weaponized in order to use it against the very people, like these people are that I know of that are so hardcore pro-life voters that's the only topic that they vote for. In a lot of ways, are forced, in a sense, to go against their own best interest because of the perverted message that has been turned on its head. Like the you know what I mean? So like, when I don't say the things that I do from a political perspective on those topics. Like, I'm talking about, my critiques come from theology, and I think that people miss that, a lot of times, because one factor, in my opinion, is, again, the system. If you're not with us, you're against us. So if I speak out against I'm not even going to call it pro-life, pro-birth movement, then, well, you must love abortion. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you're one of those people, those evil baby killers. It's like,
Yeah.
we can't even have the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what else to say about it, you know?
Yeah. Without just repeating ourselves over and over, I mean, there is I guess we've said, what there is, at least where my mind is at with it.
I will say there was a nice little respite in the book as I was I think I was on my last break today or about to go to my last break, and I was just like, oh God, this is all terrible. This is just the worst news I've ever heard. And then all of a sudden, and again, I don't really know, I didn't really know anything about the book other than what was in the podcast, and this wasn't mentioned in the podcast that I'd beforehand, but um, he was talking about he transitioned from talking about that event in Branson, Missouri. He said that he had made arrangements to go to a church the next day, and in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know if that is ringing any bells for you or not.
On.
Yeah, that's where BZ's church is. Brian's on Word of Life Church. And so whenever he said he made arrangements to go to a church in St. Joseph, I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to go to BZ's church. And he did. And he had a whole section where he talked about the sermon that Brian had preached that Sunday. And he did an interview with Brian, and he was talking about, gave some of his background, and this is a constant theme in a lot of Brian's books. Even the ones that aren't explicitly about this topic comes up in them over and over and over again. And it's so that was nice. Got a little glimmer of positivity in the middle of a glimmer of light in all the darkness.
Well, I think that even just looking in the mirror ought to give you a little bit of solace and a little bit of hope. Because you have sat here and admitted to yourself that the you of however many years ago
Right.
would have fit right in that crowd and would have been one of that crowd. But the very fact that you were able to recognize that and reverse course and have reconstructed into a place now to where you are in I don't know how anybody would say otherwise, a healthy faith And, you know,
I can think of a few people that would say it's not healthy, but
well,
whatever.
I mean, when I say healthy faith, I just simply mean the fact that, like, you shall know them by their fruit. Look at your life. You know what I mean? Like, you're coming online every week talking about Jesus and the love of God.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
whereas you were more than likely to go online every week talking about weaponry before your deconstruction, you know, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the very fact that you are an example of that should give you a little bit of solace, you know, like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's just hard to it's hard to even see that sometimes. Like I'm always like I'm aware of it, but it almost is like a different me. Like a different like I'm
it's hilarious that you say that, because think about that terminology.
yeah. Given
To
what
be born again.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's what that should mean, right? I think I mean, to repent means to literally turn around, change directions, go a different way,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
I mean, that's all the time used in church language, right? Is we have to bury the old man and be born again to a new life,
Yeah.
you know, like, it should look like a new life, should feel like a new life, like a new, you know, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
heck, I've went through 3 or 4 of those in my life, so
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be people that listen to this that are going to be offended, and there's just no way of getting around that. And anytime you're talking about, I mean, anytime you talk, even like every conversation we have is probably going to offend some people. Honestly, talking theology, like you're probably going to make some people uncomfortable.
especially if I'm in it.
But then, especially politics, it almost seems like politics is worse nowadays than religion, as far as like causing disagreement and argument and offense and you know, I mean, I just want anyone to know that if you were offended, I love you, and I don't mean to offend, but I will say this, and I'm just feeling a little, I don't know, I'm feeling all kind of ways today because of what I've heard today. But if if you being offended brings about repentance, then just be offended.
Heard that.
I mean,
Some
I
people need to be offended. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, for real. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny, it's so backwards. That's something else I was thinking of today. Like, because a lot of folks will talk about how, oh, we're not preaching the real gospel anymore. Everything's it's watered down, mushy gushy, like, you know what I mean?
yeah, trust me, I know.
Like,
If anyone knows, I know.
no one wants to offend anybody anymore. Well, oh, yeah. I mean, there is a place for offense, but what should be what should be offended in you? What should be how should you be offended, and how should you be stirred on to repentance? It should be in the things that Jesus actually taught, right?
Right.
So like if hearing that you are supposed to love your neighbor and like no, for real, actually do it, not dismiss it as impractical, but like actually do it. If that is offensive, good. Good, right? It should be. It should.
And if you need another healthy dose of offense, we'll be back, same place, same time next week.
I mean, that's what in one sense, it's what conviction is, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and I mean, there's a difference between conviction and offense, but yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, yeah, I mean, sometimes conviction can manifest itself as offense initially.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of stirring, right? Some sort of, I don't know what other, I guess stirring is probably, I should have just left it at that. There has to be some sort of stirring, something to stir you up, whether
Yeah.
that be offense or even anger or sadness or any sort of emotion, but they all lead to some sort of stirring that can lead to repentance if you allow it to.
Right.
So,
I don't know. I don't know. Call me crazy. I just think that like Paul talks about the gospel being the power. That the gospel itself has power. And I mean, the the fact that while we were enemies, Christ died for us. That love is self-giving love, in particular, co-suffering, other-centered, self-giving love. That itself is the power. That's the gospel, and that is the power, the greatest power in all of the world. It's the same power that held Jesus to the cross. It's the same power that rose that he caused him to rise from the dead. It's the uh, uh, his entire life, his teaching, all of it is that. And that is what will save the world. But we have to believe that. We have to actually believe that and submit to it. And sometimes that's going to mean taking some L's. Most of the time, it's probably going to mean that. Again, it's a narrow way. I don't know. Like you said, I'm repeating myself at this point, but yeah, it's just I've been a little bit bummed today, off and on, going back and forth on it.
see, this is somewhere where we are very, we'll say the same things, but a lot of times we'll use it on different topics. But this is one way I think that we're on the same page with, is because, like, to me, that is where our perception of reality fails. Like, it's in our perception of power, in our perception of what it means to
100%.
what it means to win and lose. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's
Right.
where not to me, when I talk about the our lack of perception of reality, that's more of along the line, not necessarily the reality of like physics and creation for me personally, but I'm talking about like our perception of like the paradigm that we're looking at things from, like power and domination and control, and what does it actually mean to win or to lose, if there are winners and losers, right? What does power
Right.
look like? What does it mean? And I use the language of winning and losing because of what we said earlier about, like, depending on who you are, some people were looking at Jesus's sacrifice, death on the cross, his crucifixion, and saying Jesus lost.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It really is funny because those there's so many things about Jesus' life that are those, because of what that reminds me of is that coincidence of opposites, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem possible that the greatest victory in the history of the world is a man naked, hung on a cross, dying. That doesn't seem like that would be
That's
the greatest victory.
that is the supreme image of
Yeah.
power.
Exactly.
It's not the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
It's not weaponry or political might. It's not who has the largest military or military budget. It's none of these things that we associate with power and might. The greatest icon of power is a dying man hanging from a Roman cross.
Yeah.
It's the upside down.
Yeah. Well, you got anything else to say?
I mean, I've always got things to say, but nothing now.
Feel like I need to crawl up in a corner somewhere, just cry for a little bit.
Well,
But I can't do that. I mean, I could, but
sometimes a good cry is needed, coming from a guy who never does it.
well, it's not even, and I don't want it to be misunderstood. I don't mean cry like from a. What's making me emotional at the moment is just thinking about the cross, honestly.
Right.
Thinking about how good God is and how even what we would imagine goodness is seems to be upside down, you know.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I said that I never cry, and actually I cried at church on Sunday
Reckless love get you.
every time. Every time.
Man, I was really hoping that Peyton was supposed to sing that song, Behold, This is Jesus. And I love that song. It goes right along with what we're saying tonight, actually. Even though most of the people at church would disagree with everything we've said. Not everything, but a lot of the more political stuff, yeah. But like that song gets me for sure. You know which one I'm talking about?
No.
Oh. It says this is who he is. The lamb on the throne. This is who he is. He dies for his own. This is Jesus. You know that song?
I'm sure I've heard it.
But it's basically all the stuff we've been saying about Jesus. Like
Yeah.
this is who Jesus is. He's the one who dies. He's the one whose throne is a cross and whose crown is a crown of thorns. He is meek and lowly, but also the Lord.
Right.
Lords aren't supposed to be meek and lowly. But that's who Jesus is, man.
Right. Yeah, for me, it was that perfect storm, right? Because I mean, I had told you this in text message, but I had went to the church yard. So our church did like a yard sale to raise funds because we talked about it before, but our church was just basically destroyed by the floods that we
Right.
had locally. Because our church is right on the Green River, and so yeah, it was underwater, and so we're trying to raise funds so that we can rebuild, certain things. And so we did a thing where members donated things to be sold in the yard sale, and we did it, and it was in the adjacent county. So I had to drive home through Sacramento, and I seen that church sign. What I've already quoted it once, but it was that it wasn't nails that held Jesus to the cross, but it was his own love. And I allowed that, like I read it and I considered it as I was driving, and it was one of those things that I considered all weekend. It was just that was on Saturday, so I considered it Saturday, and it was still fresh on my mind Sunday. And then we sung Reckless Love, which wrecks me every time I hear it anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was ripe for a
good crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one got me.
Yeah, I think I cried on Sunday too, but I don't remember what song it was. I don't think it was Reckless Love. It may have been.
To me, there's just this is a completely different topic, but the whole idea, because we did the whole Sing Your Truth and we talked about it then, but just that to me, that song, if you actually think through what's being said in the song Reckless Love, I don't know how that can't, especially if you have certain images in your mind, but I don't know how that can't, if you take those words seriously, if you mean what you say, or you take seriously the words when you're meditating on them. I don't know how
Sing your truth.
I don't know how that doesn't cause some sort of stirring within you, right?
Yeah. Right.
Especially depending on where you're at in your personal life, but we've all been at places where you feel like, man, I'm a scumbag, dude. I'm the worst of the worst, and there is literally nothing. I mean, I can't say it as good as Paul did, and I can't even quote him because I'm terrible at that kind of stuff, but there's nothing that can separate you from the love of God. Nothing. There's no principalities or powers. There's no act that you can do. There's no amount of violence that you can commit. There's literally nothing that you can do. There's no mountain he won't climb up. There's no shadow he won't light up.
Yeah.
How does that not,
Yeah. Yeah. It's overwhelming. It's never ending. Reckless, relentless. Will not stop. Can't stop stopping.
And there's just so much power in those. There's so much power in those words like reckless. And especially when you apply it to the love of God, because for something to be reckless, that means you're acting out of disregard for your own benefit, your own will. I am risking everything for this.
Right.
Which you
Yeah.
think about the cross, like he literally risked everything,
Right.
took it upon himself and said, forgive them for they know not what they do. Right. Like,
Right.
that's the ultimate image of recklessness, of reckless love. That is reckless love. Or your love is relentless. Like, for something to be relentless, that means that it doesn't matter what stands in the way. I will never quit coming. I am going to be in relentless pursuit of this, no matter what. I was going to say until the last thing, if it's the last thing I do, but for God, I don't think there will be a last thing that he does. You know what I mean? In human terms, for something to be relentless, that means I am going to pursue this until I take my last breath.
Yeah. But it's never ending.
Recklessly, right. Which, hence, the
Right.
basis of ultimate reconciliation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you mean what you're saying, think through those words, right? If you actually believe that God's love is relentless, that he will pursue that love relationship and union with you until God takes his last breath, which, yes, I know that's a paradox. He will never. That's the point.
In one sense, he did.
He
in
did.
Jesus. Yeah.
But then he resurrected, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you take that seriously, I don't know how you can at least consider like, well, wait a minute. I think that means he's going to pursue it forever.
Right. Yeah. And if he's got forever to work with and he searches until he finds it, I mean, yeah, there's just no getting around the universalist implications in that song. So sing your truth.
So, Corey Asbury, we need you actually to come on as a guest for not a whole 3-hour episode. Just give us 10 minutes of your time. Come on and talk about that song.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
I haven't watched it, but I'd heard that he did do an interview with someone where they was talking about that song, and apparently a lot of people were not happy with him for that song.
I've actually seen some videos of his on TikTok, and he seems like an interesting guy because I don't know anything about the guy. I don't know his background. I don't know where he comes from. The only thing I know about him is that song. But like some of the videos that I've seen kind of had indicated that too. And I actually had seen him singing it. Like some of the videos was like him going into prisons and singing and stuff. And it made me kind of interested to know his story, but it's just not one of those things I've had time to look into. But so if you want to come on and talk about it, we'd love to have you, Corey. Also, I know you're trying to wrap up and you're on overtime and all, but
that's all good.
I had one thing that happened to me today that was kind of interesting. Kelly actually sent me a TikTok video today, and it literally gave me goosebumps. And but it was a Jelly Roll of all people.
Oh yeah.
He was at some concert and he was basically preaching from the stage.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's, like when you hear somebody say something and you're like, this is coming, this is real. Like you can feel, like, I don't know how to explain it, but probably everybody that's a Christian that's been in church knows what you're talking about. When you can just hear the truth and it like gives you goosebumps. Like you just know it's coming from a place of like, oh, that's coming from the heart. He means what he's saying there, and it just, it gave me goosebumps and about made me cry. I didn't cry today, but came close. So
yeah,
I don't know I don't know where he's at. Like I don't know that much about Jelly Roll either, to be honest.
I know he did that song with Brandon Lake.
I believe actually didn't Brandon Lake get some slack from the community for that?
Yeah.
And then now look at Jelly Roll's preaching Christ's love. I mean, that's what the whole message was, the love of God. Jelly Roll's on stage at a festival.
Yeah.
Preaching about the love of God from a stage, and like people were giving Brandon Lake crap for collaborating with him. Now look what's happening.
Yeah. That's part of what's wrong with us. It's part of it. People having that kind of reaction. Yeah.
But to me, that just speaks to like, what's the message? You know, like what is he speaking of? It's not like what I can't speak for the guy because I don't know him. I don't know Jelly Roll. Like I don't know his story. I just admitted I don't know that much about him. But from what the clip that I saw and from what I have heard him speak of, why is he preaching to people at a rock and roll festival? It's because of love. He experienced the love of God, and it forever changed his life. Like he wasn't talking, because this is a guy, like what I do know about the guys, he used to be involved in drugs, and had a kind of a rough background with that, and it wasn't him being shamed into, you're such a dirty sinner that you need a savior, that has caused him to be preaching from a stage. It's because he experienced the love.
Yeah. I mean, we quote it all the time, but it's the goodness of God that draws you to repentance.
Oh, I don't understand why that's so hard. Why is that so hard for us?
I don't know. It's, I don't know, but I really do think it's a paradoxical thing, because I think that we think that that's too easy, but it's actually like one of the hardest things there is to do. Well,
Right.
just like love, to accept that there's just so many reasons for us to, I don't know. There's a lot.
Yeah, that's the response you'll get when you're like, because my whole theology could probably be boiled down to love your neighbor as yourself. Like that's God is love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Like to me, that is Galatians 5:14 says it all. That's the fulfillment of the law and the prophets is to love your neighbor as yourself. Like that's what it all boils down to. And when you tell that to people, the criticism you'll get is, well, you're just trying to make it too easy. You don't want to do all the like. There's literally nothing harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's literally nothing harder. Can you imagine? Like, I don't even. You can take it to the extremes, but can you imagine, like, if a horrific somebody did something horrific to a family member, and you've got to look that person in the eye and love them as you love yourself?
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing in the world to do. You know what's easy to do? Take retribution.
Right. Hate them.
Kill them.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
easy way out.
Yeah.
No, love, that's the hard way. That's the narrow road. That's the one that's hard to walk.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, this is an obvious thing, but man, it literally is just everywhere in the Bible. I mean, at least in the Gospels and New Testament. I mean, like, because Paul says that in Galatians 5, but is that what you said? Is it in 5:14? Is that what it is?
5:14, yeah.
And then
That's the one I actually do know.
But Jesus says the same thing to the guy that's like, what's the greatest commandment or whatever? Or Jesus asks him what the greatest commandment is, and love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And whenever Paul is talking about marriage and how a marriage should operate, he says that essentially the gist of it is love each other the way that Christ loves the church. And Jesus says, a new commandment I give to you, to love each other the way that he said people will know you're my disciples by your love. Like that message of love, it just is the scriptures.
I agree.
There. It's just there over and over and over again.
God is love.
Exactly. Yeah.
1 John 4:8, I do know that one too. Actually, it's 4:8 and 4:13. I think it's in there twice.
Yeah. So like with all of this political stuff, like that's why it's so, I'm not seeing the love, guys. That's what it is.
Where is the love?
I'm not seeing the love. Where's the love? I don't see love of enemies. American Christians, if you I mean, they've done polls and asked people, like, what do you think of when you think of American Christianity, or like evangelicals or whatever, and it's always associated with negative things, and like dadgummit, there's a reason for that. Like we're too easy. We so easily want to just let ourselves off the hook. No, we need to stay on that hook for a little bit. We need to do some self-reflection and think, well, why is it that the church has this reputation of being hateful and hating gay people? And you know, it's not completely and entirely unwarranted. And we need to own that, and we need to ask why. Well, I think it's because all the things we've been talking about. Part of it is that like you said, we've reduced the gospel down to some formula to get you to heaven, and forgot that, oh yeah, we're actually supposed to be following this guy. We're actually supposed to be following what he said to do, how he said to live your life.
Yeah, I mean, if he is the way, the truth, and the life, then that seems like you would want to follow the way.
Yeah.
It seems kind of common sense, but what do I know?
Yeah. I don't know. There's so many more things we could say. One thing I was thinking about whenever you were talking about the cross and being like, oh, I forgot how you were wording it, but about being like, self-sacrificing or whatever. Like, one thing I was thinking about was how like in certain formulations of the cross, it's more like a legal transaction than it is
For sure.
Christ. So for some folks, what it means for Christ died for you is that he like is that it's some sort of like legal transaction. If something's a legal transaction, then there's not forgiveness. Like, the whole point of forgiveness is that it's not paid.
Right.
Right.
If a debt is paid off, it's not forgiven. Even if you're not the one who paid it, somebody still paid it. You can't count that as forgiven. It was paid, not forgiven.
So like but what we're talking about here is more akin to like a firefighter who runs into a burning building to save people and dies in the process. That's more like what we're talking about.
And I think well, hold on. I don't want to cut you off. Keep going.
No, that's basically it. It's like Christ came to save us. And that's what he did. And he did it by laying down his life for us.
Right.
But that doesn't, I mean, I just think that we miss the real point of it when we turn it into a legal transaction.
Right. For sure. And all I was going to add to that is, I think we need to really truly think about when we talk about salvation. When you talk about he came to save us, or he's like a firefighter running into a burning building to save us, what does that mean? What do you mean when you say salvation? When you see the word sozo, salvation, because if you would have asked me that 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have said it means, well, I don't have to go to hell when I die.
Right.
But is that what you really believe salvation is? Just that? Or so that reduces the life that we live now to nothing. It's worthless. It's pointless. We're just waiting to get out of here.
Right.
To me, that's not complete healing. That's not, the salvation that I have in mind is bigger than that.
Yeah.
I believe in a bigger salvation than it's simply just, we're waiting here to die, and then when we do, we can finally live.
Right. Now you can be born again right now.
I have been.
Yeah.
So that's all I've got.
Yeah. Oh, my word. I'm all snotty now from crying.
Ew.
Yeah. We're going to shut up now?
I suppose.
All right, then.